Well, I'm Jacquie Elliot, and in the studio today we have Sarah Cyr, who is a writer whose work has been published in Newsweek magazine, the Boston Globe, Boston Magazine, and Art News. 2 years ago, Cyr began a writing practice inspired by Natalie Goldberg, the author of the wildly successful book Writing Down the Bones. She now leads a workshop in Bend based on this practice for writers, artists, and others, and we've invited her on The Point to talk about writing. Welcome to The Point.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi. So let's get to the point. Writing. Does everybody have a great novel in them, do you think?
Gosh, that's such a great question. I do think that Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a book recently about creativity, and I agree with her that each one of us innately has a creative side to us. And whether you can accomplish writing a full novel, that takes a lot of discipline, but definitely within each of us, we have a creative side, and it's just a matter of whether we tap into it or not.
And so this workshop that you have coming up, I think I read Natalie Goldberg's book, and it was wonderful for that. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what you're trying to do, is help writers free the writer within?
Right.
Would you say that?
To tap into that creativity, exactly. And what I found was, I was a journalist about 15 years ago, and as you said, wrote for Newsweek magazine, and I found myself sitting down at my computer to write an article, and I would so often freeze up. I would type a few words, and then I would be editing within the same sentence, and it was a frustrating process, and so I moved away from writing. And a few years ago, a friend mentioned this book, Writing Down the Bones, and I picked it up and started doing some of the exercises, and it completely changed the way I approach writing now. And so I've been doing this practice for a couple of years, and at its core is a timed writing session in response to a prompt. So, for example, I'll set a timer for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and then I'll have a prompt in front of me, something like, what do you remember about the month of August? Or my mother's hands. Mm-hmm. And you write continuously for that set amount of time, for the 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And that's the goal. You keep the pen going. Mm-hmm. And you don't worry. This is your very, very, very rough draft. You don't worry about spelling or grammar or whether it's logical. You really follow your mind. Mm-hmm. and follow the memories that come up. And it's a really freeing process. So you're moving out of that left brain analytical side of writing that can be really frustrating for people, and including myself, and accessing this more raw creative side that I like to say you're connecting your heart to the pen, scribbling madly across the page. And what I found is that words dance off the page, and you write things that surprise you. Mm-hmm. You discover things about your life and your memories that you wouldn't have really accessed if you stayed in that left brain, sort of tight analytical type of writing.
So it's kind of like getting out of the way so that you can free the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Would you say writing is a spiritual experience, or is that too woo-woo?
I like woo-woo, so I would. I think you're channeling something through writing. You can absolutely feel a channeling of something while you're writing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
so there's a lot of workshops coming up. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of not only the ones that you're doing,
right.
but workshops starting in the fall. Fall, yes. I guess, seems to be the time people start thinking about writing again. Is that correct?
It's back to school time, right? Okay. Everyone wants to, kind of feel that fresh back to school feeling. So there is a lot going on in Central Oregon in terms of a growing writing community. And that's really wonderful because writing can be such a lonely process. So mm-hmm. connecting with other writers can be really fulfilling. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm teaching 2 writing groups starting in the second week of September, and then a book study group called Book Club Elevated that's a 10-month-long series of workshops on how to read books in a way to improve as writers. Mm-hmm. And then another workshop that I'm teaching at the Workhouse that's specifically geared for artists, so painters or sculptors. And I teach this type of writing practice to free up how how artists write about their work, artist statements or blog articles or essays about their work. But also throughout the community, there's a wonderful teachers, Mike and Irene Cooper, who teach at the Workhouse very regularly, writing classes and writing salons. And then there's a Writers Guild in Bend that's also here. So there's a lot more in terms of writing opportunities to connect with other writers in Central Oregon than 10 years ago.
Do we have a lot of writers? Does this community, it seems like this is the kind of community that would attract people who want to write, want to move here and write, or maybe have already written and want to move here.
I've connected with so many writers here that come to my workshops, and writers, you don't have to be professionally published. You can have a desire to just write for yourself, to write for your family. You can be a beginner, remembering, gosh, I used to journal when I was a teenager, and I loved that creative process. And that's what I find a lot of people coming to my writing groups with that background.
They just want to write. They don't necessarily want to get published.
Yeah, maybe eventually.
I think that publishing idea kind of can block writers. Isn't that where you get your block? If you think I'm writing this one great novel, then every word has to be wonderful. Whereas if you're just expressing yourself, you're more free, and that's basically what your workshop's about.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so when is your workshop coming up?
The two writing groups begin the second week in September, and we meet once a week for 8 weeks. There's one group that meets Monday nights at Soul Alchemy in Bend, and then the other group meets Wednesday mornings at Dudley's bookstore. And what kind of things are you going to be doing? We will primarily be writing in response to prompts, as I said, and then we also read work of great writers and learn from them and study what they've written.
And you don't have to be any kind of a writer. This can just be something you're doing to as a hobby or something you enjoy doing.
Exactly. But I have worked with people who are working on novels, so it's a great span of hobbyists and professionals. Great.
Okay. And how can people learn more about these workshops?
Well, I have a website, and it's just my name, so Sarah, SarahCyr.com, and everything is on the website.
Okay. Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. SarahCyr.com.
Okay, terrific. Well, we look forward to all the great works that are going to be produced after you get all these wonderful writers in Bend, and I may see you there.
Great. I'd love to have you there, Jackie.
Well, thank you for coming on The Point.
Okay, thank you.
And you're listening to the Wednesday edition of The Point on KPOV. After the break, dial a ride. Stay